This is the We Built This Business podcast. Today, we're running our how-to mini-series where we speak with a business owner who is an expert in a particular area so that we can learn and do a deep dive and find out more information to help our own businesses. Hello, and welcome back to the We Built This Business podcast. Today, we continue with our mini-series, How To, where we are discussing how to get customers through networking with Peter Moles. Peter is the founder of Mastermind 9, networking in and outside ideas. He is also an award-winning networker and has been attending networking events for over 20 years. Peter, welcome to the podcast.
Daniel, thanks you so much for having me, mate. It's an absolute privilege and an honour to be here talking to you. Really grateful to you.
Looking forward to today, Pete. We're going to go into depth into networking. It's an area that you're particularly got a big interest and a big skill set in. So let's just start by talking about your businesses, essentially.
Yeah, thanks for starting there. So I've been a freelance, self-employed business coach for the last 5 years, just over 5 years now. I've been running a networking community called Networking In for about 6 years, just over 6 years. And 3 years ago, I did a sort of pivot, I suppose, towards mastermind groups over one-to-one business coaching when I had a client that had gone from 120k to 1.6 million. She decided that was the time to stop working with me. And I kind of looked at myself, looked at my business model, and it made me reconsider the business model, essentially, because I was helping other people build businesses that work without them whilst I swapped my time for money. And Daniel will be very familiar that that's not the way to build a business. So we pivoted over to Mastermind 9, and that's the business that I'm absolutely hell-bent on growing at the moment. And hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about that journey another time.
Absolutely. So if we talk about the networking side, so let's start with Networking In. Can you tell us more about that group, how many times it meets a month, and what happens on that networking event?
Yeah, great. So it all started face-to-face back in the days before COVID, and I launched my first networking group. I suppose I'll take you back a bit further, actually. I have always been a big networker, and I've always gone out of my way to go to networking events, and I've always seen the benefits of building relationships. And when I started working for my old boss for a bit, another business coach company called Action Coach, networking was a very big part of my job role. And what I would find is I was going out to lots of different networking events, and I would always do the same thing. I would always go straight to the middle of the network and look to make friends with the person who was putting it on, because for me, that's like the most obvious thing that you can do if you want to ingratiate yourself within a network. So that's what I did. And after about, 6 months or 8 months of me going and making friends with lots of people in the middle of networks, I went, why don't I just make this easy for myself and become the person at the middle of the network? And so I started Networking In from a business centre called Regis in Field. It's an old business centre that I used to run in a previous life. And the first day we started out with, I think, 5 founding members, if you like. And then the next month we had 13. And by the third month, there were 35 people. And that's where we kind of capped the numbers. We were getting 35 people month after month after month, and I decided to open it up to a second venue, second location, and a second day of the week, or day of the month, I should say. And so we had networking in Field, and then networking in Newbury, and then you could see COVID coming, or I could see COVID coming a mile off. You know, a lot of the people that I was networking were, weren't interested in the fact that we were going to, it was going to come and it was going to hit us. But I could see it from the moment that it got to Italy. It was like, it's an inevitability, it's going to come. And we ended up jumping online in the January before the March lockdown. So we'd had a couple of months of networking on Zoom before we were forced to do it on Zoom. And I think that gave us a real head start in the marketplace. Actually, we had, in back in the day, we were getting 70, 80 people coming along every 2 weeks to our networking event. The reality is,
wow,
networking in has always only really been a kind of part of my marketing strategy, if you like. Really, people come and they end up swimming in a pond with my customers. Whereas I think there were lots of other people that then kind of saw the commercial opportunity with online networking and they took it in a different direction, which is something that, when you're a business owner, you have to make a decision on where you're going to invest your time. And we very much decided it was going to be twice a month, the first and third Wednesdays at 7:30. And that's what we're still doing today.
Brilliant. And I think you've built a very loyal community as well amongst the people that attend, and everyone speaks very highly of you. You were also you had an award given to you. I think it was Networker of the Year. How did that come about?
I was the Networker of the Year 2022, and that award had been on my dream board for about 4 years prior to winning it. I'm a big believer in visualizing the future that you want for yourself, and I'd put Networker of the Year as the award that I wanted to win 4 years before I won it. I applied in 2021, and I was a runner-up in 2021, and then finally won it in 2022. And I think so. The way that works is it's an organisation called Great British Expos. They do expos all over the country, and then they do regional awards ceremonies. So I think there's one up in the north in Manchester, one in Birmingham, one in the West Country, one in the Thames Valley, and people are nominated for these awards, and then the winners get put forward to the national finals, and I won the national final for Networker of the Year, which was a great honour. I'm very, very proud of that award, to be honest, and it's a reflection of, to win an award like that, you have to practice what you preach. You have to be a person that looks to give abundantly to other people, and I've modelled myself for the last 6 years at least on look first to give, and then you shall receive. And I think 60 people voted for me in the end for Networker of the Year, which was wonderful.
Congratulations! Yeah, I mean, I think from the first time I met you in person, you just knew everybody, and everybody seemed to know you as well. And I think that's where we go back to. It's the power of networking, and networking for me has been something that I've dabbled with, and I've never committed fully. And I can see the people that do commit fully and the success that they have from it. Some of your clients, through your networking groups, have you got a success story that you could tell us of how someone that has kind of committed to the networking marketing and managed to get a good result from it?
So, probably the most relevant one that I can talk to you about is, so today I was up at Oxford Brookes University talking to them about rolling out a workshop that I recently delivered to a bunch of master's students on how to network like a pro. And I delivered this workshop probably 6 weeks ago now for the first time. And the lady who brought me in to deliver the workshop is a lecturer at Oxford Brookes. I met her probably 6 years ago when I was just starting out at my old role at Action Coach. And she took a bunch of students from Winchester University along to a Chamber of Commerce event where she wanted to introduce them to the world of business and stuff. And I was just there, and I got talking to the students, and she found me to be really helpful and kind to the students who were kind of, at that point, probably 15 years my junior or something like that. And she was really grateful for the time that I invested in them and her. And we connected on LinkedIn. And then about 5 months ago, she reached out and said, I'm running this course and there's a section on networking, and who better to deliver this section of this course than the Networker of the Year? Hiya, we've not seen each other in ages, and literally we'd probably, maybe communicated on LinkedIn twice in 6 years, but she'd been there in the background, and she'd been watching my upward trajectory, I suppose. And when she had the opportunity for me, she reached out and gave me the opportunity to have what was then my first paid, my first paid workshop, which wasn't quite my first paid workshop, but it's a nice example of how networking has helped for me. And, if I think about our clients, of which there are about 50 in our mastermind groups currently, almost all of them have been as a result of networking in some way, shape or form.
Yeah. And I think it's probably a good time to go on to those mastermind groups and how I've been part of one of those mastermind groups for a 12-month period, and I found it really helpful. It was like a networking meetup of high-value clients on a regular monthly basis, I found. How have your clients benefited from being part of that mastermind program?
Oh, well, the results are different for everyone, but I got a text message literally 2 days ago from one of our newer mastermind clients who has done 1,000% increase in business in the last year. We've got multiple clients that have done hundreds and hundreds of percent increases over the year. We've got countless examples of people joining as a one-man band and then taking on team members, 3, 4, 5 team members in the course of the year. I think what we do really, really well for the right people is give business owners a real profound confidence in what they're doing. Lots of people put their prices up. Some people fire people who aren't the right fit. Some people fire clients. Lots of people get really maniacally focused on a specific niche target market. Lots of people would tell you that actually they tell the members of their mastermind group stuff that they don't tell their partners. We bring 9 non-competing and diverse business owners together who are all on a similar journey at a similar time. They want to grow. They like helping people. And we get them to sign a non-disclosure agreement. And as a result of that non-disclosure agreement, you get vulnerability and honesty in a place I've never seen vulnerability or honesty like it in any networking that I've ever done. So, you likened it to networking. I think it's much, much, much more powerful than networking. I think that it's much more like a non-exec board of directors for a business owner than a network.
Yeah, it's like almost a safety blanket.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that we get trapped in, Daniel, is procrastination. We don't know which way to turn. We could do this, we could do this, we could do this. And as a result, you kind of freeze and you don't move forward in any one direction. And what we do is we give those business owners the ability to put all of the options on the table and get some real, honest, genuine feedback from people who have got no ulterior motive. That they've not that vested interest in the business succeeding or failing. There's no finances on the line. It's just they're there to help from the goodness of their heart and on the understanding that that person will help them as well. So that's how it works. And I'm incredibly proud of it.
Yeah. And I think it's, like you said, it's a level up from networking, and it allows business owners the confidence to discuss things that you would love to discuss at a networking event. Often I found when, you meet someone that has been through either some of the struggles that you're currently going through or the levels that you've been through, when someone's kind of 1 or 2 steps ahead and you just like to ask them some honest questions. And I think it opens that floor up.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think that so many of us, when we go networking, one of the cardinal mistakes we make with networking actually is the fact that we try and sell to people. And I think the fact that lots of people go to a networking event with the idea that they want to sell something, it means that actually many of us, me included, put on a bit of a mask, and we don't want to expose our underbelly and make people realize that, we're not as good as maybe we make out. I think it's just one of those traits of the human condition. We give people a space to be vulnerable and honest.
Yeah. No, and I think it's a very powerful way to help grow your business as well, because you get advice from people that are in different sectors, which for me is very easy to be in a bit of a pigeonhole where you can't see anything else except for what's in your own area. So that's what I found particularly powerful.
Thank you.
Regarding, so someone who's now looking to commit to networking as part of their marketing strategy, what advice would you give them for preparing to begin networking?
So I've thought lots about this, and there are literally tens of bits of advice that I could give. But if we go from the place where someone potentially is about to jump into networking for the first time, and we understand that we're not all mad extroverts who love going out and meeting new people. If we go from that place, I think probably the most important lesson that someone can learn when they're very new to networking is that we are all naked underneath. We are all just human beings trying to do our best, and the insecurities and the doubts and all of those things that can play on your mind the first time that you step out of your comfort zone and go into a room, and all of a sudden there's lots of people who seem to know each other and the clicks and all of that stuff, that if you look at it through the lens, that lens, it can be quite scary. It can be quite daunting. It can kind of be, it's better to stand on the outside rather than go forward. But I think the most important thing that you can understand is that everyone feels like that the first time they do it. And like they say, all of the good stuff happens on the other side of our comfort zone. So if you are feeling like that, it's probably a sign that you should do it. So I think that's probably the biggest and most important piece of advice I would give to anyone who's kind of on the fence about doing it for the first time. And there are lots of different types of networking groups that people could get involved with. And if the person that's listening to this is perhaps more on the introverted side of the human nature, I would very much encourage them to look at online networking rather than face-to-face networking. I think face-to-face networking can be incredibly daunting, and I think that somehow, some way, doing it on Zoom or one of the other platforms is an easier way to dip your toe into the water. I think because we've had COVID and we're all so used to having to be in a Zoom screen where there's 30 other people, I think that it is a much easier way to get started for someone who is new to networking. And obviously there are pros and cons to both face-to-face and online. A second tip, if they're brand new, I would encourage them to look at online before face-to-face, because especially if they're on the introvert scale, I think you've got to have a goal. I think, in business, in life, it's really important to have a goal. But that goal should never be to try and sell something to someone. The goal should always be, when you're starting out, to try and help someone with something. In my opinion, look to help first and good will come back on you. But if you look to sell, people smell self-interest a mile off. So I'd definitely recommend having a goal.
Talking about strategy then, so you committed to going to networking, trying to build some relationships. What strategy would you put in play to try and secure a customer when you're not actually selling? It's probably a hard one to answer, but just to reverse engineer what you're saying about not trying to sell, how do you go about, because the ultimate goal is often to sell. How do you go about building that relationship so that you can still sell to someone when you're not trying to sell?
That's a great point. And I think it comes down to the fact that people smell self-interest a mile off. And if you go in trying to sell anything to anyone, you'll seldom succeed. So I always think that it's better to try and sell through the room rather than to the room. So you should go in not looking in the first instance to find your target market. You should go in looking to find and build relationships with people who cater to your target market in a different sector, and start to look at how you can build relationships with potential future strategic partners. For example, if I'm a brand new business coach coming into a networking event, you might determine that there are going to be lots of different business owners in the room. And if I think about who is likely to have the ear of the most of my target market across all of the industries, you might determine that an accountant is probably the best person to look to build a relationship with, because they will do some overlapping stuff that a business coach would do, but they absolutely won't be able to commit the time, energy, effort, and consistency that some business owners would need if they were considering a business coach. So rather than try and sell business coaching services to the accountant, it's sell yourself in a really positive way by looking to help them. And at some point that will come back on you, and you'll start to pick up referrals from that accountant or that, and you can look at it with absolutely any business doing anything. There will be people in networking events that are likely to be servicing the same market that you are.
Yeah, and I think that's a very interesting way of looking at things as well, because obviously people buy from people, like you say, and often you don't know who people know. So you might connect with someone who is the most connected person in that room, but you don't know that at the time. And if you can impress them, build a relationship, and just over time get to know them, they may be able to, in the future, be a great ally to gaining additional business from you.
Have you ever read The Go-Giver?
No, I haven't.
By Bob Berg. It's an absolutely wonderful book on networking, and it talks essentially about being a person that adds profound levels of value rather than takes things from others. And you say people buy from people. The extended version of that sentence is people buy from people that they know, that they like, and that they trust. And until you've got trust, you'll never sell anything to anyone. So if you go into a networking event and you start trying to sell before someone knows who you are, before you've got the credibility within the space, before you've built up that prerequisite amount of trust, people will be so repelled from you that it's not even funny. It's not even worth it. And one of the biggest mistakes that rookie networkers make is go in, what do you do? This is what I do. This is how I do it. And then they just start barraging you with everything. That it's much better to get to know the person and ask about their family and their friends and what they're doing afterwards and how they like spending their time, and start to build a relationship. And I think another big thing, and it's kind of in sales as much as it's in networking, you should never be looking to make the sale. You should just be looking to make the next part of the process, to sell the next part of the process, right? So it's not meet and then sell, it's meet and then it's sell the meeting and have a one-to-one. And it's about having that relationship where you spend a bit more time getting to know each other. And then probably in networking terms, it's about following up within, a few weeks of that first meeting and arranging a second meeting. And the more the more that you can feed in, the more that you can become known by the person that's potentially going to be able to open the doors for you in the quickest amount of time, that's when you're gonna make sales. In my opinion, you might get the accountant, you might be the business coach that sells business coaching to the accountant, but it's far easier to sell through him to his client base.
Yeah. And I think the next kind of question, because I think that's a very good answer, is on commitment. So, for example, you could commit to one virtual networking event a month and say after 12 months, I'm just not getting results. What advice would you give someone who's looking to commit to networking with regards to A, attendance, and B, how many events, meetups, follow-ups, all these sorts of things should you be looking to do?
So the first thing to say is a marathon, not a sprint. If I can literally count on one hand the occasions where someone has come to one of my networking events, or I've been in the presence of someone where they go, this is what I do, and someone says, I absolutely need that, and they make a sale. I can count them on one hand. And I've done hundreds, if not 1,000 networking events, Dan. So the truth is that it takes time to get to trust. And even when you're at trust, that person's got to need what you want at the time that they trust you. And that need might not come around for another 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 3 years. I literally just took on a client recently who I have been networking with and talking to for 5 years.
Wow.
So it's a marathon, not a sprint. And if you're going to commit to a group, because there's lots of different groups that people could go to and places that people could get involved, I think it's really worthwhile identifying what it is that you're looking to get from the networking. Some people are looking for relationships. Some people absolutely need to find business. Some people want a bit of both. I always think it's worthwhile looking at the various groups on offer, and all things being equal, if everything was the same price and, you could afford to go wherever, it kind of makes sense to go swimming in the pond with the most fish that you're looking to catch.
Yeah, that's great advice. How important is social media in kind of collaboration with the networking?
Oh, mate, it's so important. I think personal branding is one of the most important things that any business owner can do, and you've got to get it right, and it's not easy, and it takes discipline and consistency, and a fair level of skill, to be honest with you. I can say with my hand on my heart that social media has played a massive part in my success as a business owner. A lot of our customers are drawn to us because of the conversations that I have on social media. Have you read Oversubscribed, Daniel Priestley?
I have read half of it.
Okay.
But then I read the first half of a lot of books.
Okay. So you're familiar with the, what is it? It's the 7-11-4 principle, right?
Yeah.
So Daniel Priestley in Oversubscribed, he talks about, for you to sell anything to anyone, you need the 7-11-4. And he says that you need someone to consume 7 hours of you. So 7 hours of you. So that might be 7 hours of listening to Dan on his podcast, or 5 hours listening to Dan on his podcast, an hour watching him on YouTube, and an hour face-to-face. It might be reading some blogs. It might be reading your website. 7 hours of you. Then he says it's not enough for that 7 hours to just happen in one interaction. If they go very deep on one thing, it's unlikely that they'll buy from you. So he says that those 7 hours need to come across 11 different interactions. That could be 11 different podcast interviews over 11 different weeks, for instance, or it could be, you get the idea. But the most important thing that he says is 4. The 4 is the real key. Now, I don't know whether you went to uni or college, but if you went to uni or college, it's unlikely that you're still friends with the person that you just sat next to in lectures from time to time. You will have had way more than 7 hours together, way more than 11 interactions, but because you're only at the one location, you're probably not friends anymore. Whereas that person that you went to lectures with, you went to the cafe to grab some breakfast, you studied in the library together, and then you went and got pissed up in the evening from time to time, that's the person who you are much more likely to be friends with now. And he talks about the 7-11-4 as you need to get people to see you in different locations. If you really want them to buy, you need to show up on YouTube, on Spotify, at a networking event, on LinkedIn, wherever it is. And I think for me personally, LinkedIn really helps me do that because it's easy. I can kind of broadcast my message and it gets seen by a decent number of people. And that's one of my 4. It's not enough. The people who just see me on LinkedIn and they don't meet me at a networking event and I don't have a one-to-one with and yada, 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 they're unlikely to become customers, but it helps.
Yeah. And I think it's called Omnipresence as well, when people see you everywhere and then when they do need you, they get in touch. And like you alluded to at the beginning, where that customer that you first met them 5 years ago, they probably had you at the back of their mind for when they needed your services, that they would be in touch. And it just, depending on what you're selling, sometimes it takes that long to get to that buying point.
Yeah.
But you've already done the hard work, and that was many years ago. And then following on from that, it's then the consistency and being present and being on LinkedIn, wherever platforms you're going to be, so that they continually see little bits of you here and there, and you just stay in their mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
As an expert on networking, what question would you have asked yourself if you were me?
Oh, that's a great question. I wish you'd asked me. You told me that you were going to ask. I wish you told me you were going to ask me that. What would I ask me? I think I'd probably have asked you something like, "What's the magic formula?"
That's a good question.
It is a good question, and I think it comes back to givers gain. The magic formula, if you want to do well in networking, is that you should first look to offer value to people before you expect to take anything from them. So whenever I meet someone at networking and I go, that's a potential great client or strategic partner, I will always look to my network and go, who can I introduce that person to that will add value to them, that is like putting a little coin in their emotional bank account, because whenever they then meet with that person in the future, they'll remember me. They'll remember that it was me that introduced them. And I think if you really want to get good at networking, you should first look to just become a really good connector of people. And you don't have to have a massive network to do that, I don't think.
I think that's a great answer to a great question. Pete, it's been a fascinating conversation today. I've learnt lots, and we've definitely got some books to add to the show notes for people that have listened to read up about. People who are looking to find out more information about yourself and your business, where can they find you?
Oh, lovely. Thank you. So first things to say, I've got a free downloadable ebook on my website, which is the 16 tips to network like a pro. And I can send that to you, Dan, and you can include that in however you include it, and people can just swipe that, no problem at all. LinkedIn's probably the easiest place to find me, right? So I'm Peter Mols, Mols on LinkedIn. People can connect with me on there. If people are interested in networking in, then they should probably go to outside-ideas.com. And Mastermind groups is mastermind9.com.
Lovely. Well, thanks very much, Pete, for coming on today.
It's been amazing. Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed myself. I hope to come back again sometime.